18 miles. That's the width of the artery feeding a major share of global commerce through a gap between Yemen and the Horn of Africa. Until late 2023, this corridor pulsed with traffic. Then it went silent. Vessels abandoned the route. Insurance markets seized. Freight repriced overnight. And the world discovered its trading system was hostage to a chokepoint trap it had spent a century and a half engineering. Perim Island splits this passage into two unequal corridors. The eastern channel, Bab Iskender, is shallow and restricted, measuring just 3 kilometers across and 30 meters deep. This limits its use to regional traffic. The western channel, Dakt el-Mayun, serves as the main conduit for international shipping, dropping to depths of 200 meters to accommodate the largest container vessels and supertankers. At coordinate 12.58 degrees north, the navigable shipping lanes contract to their narrowest operational limits, forcing massive vessels to thread a tight needle. Through this confined geographic bottleneck, the global economic vascular system pumps 14% of all maritime trade, 30% of container shipments, and 10% of seaborne oil. This translates to billions of dollars of manufactured goods, electronics, and energy moving through a space that is physically minuscule on a global map. Under baseline conditions, the Strait experiences continuous, heavy traffic. Hundreds of cargo-carrying vessels transit these coordinates weekly, maintaining a tight, synchronized flow between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean. Yet this immense commercial volume relies on a single, highly concentrated pathway, with no immediate water-based alternative. When active physical threats in the corridor escalated, the steady pulse of this trade route broke. The stark contrast between a crowded maritime highway and an emptied channel exposed the extreme fragility of modern logistics. When a primary artery of global supply chains experiences an acute occlusion, the resulting systemic shock vibrates across international markets, proving that physical narrowness dictates global economic security. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 permanently altered global geography. It bypassed the long transit around Africa, shortening the voyage between Europe and Asia by approximately 7,000 kilometers. This shortcut established a direct, linear route, but it also wired a structural vulnerability directly into global shipping architecture, turning this passage into a primary economic artery. For over a century, the international trading system prioritized speed and cost minimization over resilience. It treated maritime pathways as static, guaranteed pipelines, ignoring the hazards of shifting, high-risk corridors. Today, this speed-first design leaves the global vascular system heavily dependent on a single, narrow channel. Unlike other bottlenecks, such as the Strait of Malacca, which handles massive regional flows, this western trade corridor lacks any immediate all-water alternative. The shipping network operates as a rigid, standardized machine with no built-in contingency plans. If this specific channel is compromised, the entire network must revert to the pre-1869 sailing route around the Cape of Good Hope, proving that modern globalization relies on a fragile geography designed without any real structural redundancy. In late 2023, active physical threats along the Bab el-Mandeb mutated from theoretical hazards into a chronic operating blockage. The sudden escalation of security incidents compromised the Western Channel, forcing major shipping lines to abandon the direct route. Rather than risk passage through the destabilized corridor, operators rerouted their fleets around the Cape of Good Hope. This alternative pathway acts as a massive bypass, but it inflicts a severe operational penalty. The detour adds approximately 3,500 nautical miles and 10 to 14 days of sailing time to each one-way voyage, burning hundreds of tons of extra fuel. Instantly, the maritime vascular system experienced a systemic shock, forcing vessel operators and marine insurers to rapidly reprice risk. Before the disruption, war risk insurance premiums remained a negligible baseline expense. As security incidents intensified, these premiums spiked, peaking at nearly 2% of total vessel value. For a modern supertanker or container vessel, a single transit through the Red Sea corridor carried millions of dollars in insurance overhead alone, forcing cargo owners to absorb the premium. At the same time, container and tanker freight rates surged globally, driven by blank sailings, rerouted schedules, and a sudden contraction of active fleet capacity. What initially appeared to be a transient operational shock quickly hardened into a repeating structural dysfunction. The shipping network now manages a persistent hemorrhage of logistics capacity, proving that when this narrow gateway constricts, the entire global economic body suffers. Trade economists modeling global trade flows estimate the sustained drag on the international shipping network at $15 to $20 billion annually. This represents the ongoing operational cost of a fractured network, a continuous capital hemorrhage required to sustain long-term maritime detours. The economic damage pools heavily at specific transit hubs, turning localized geographical vulnerabilities into vast systemic liabilities. The Suez Canal Authority, operating as the gatekeeper of the primary Euro-Asian corridor, has emerged as the principal institutional victim of this realignment. Historically, the canal generated a peak of nearly $10 billion in annual toll revenue, serving as a fundamental source of sovereign funding and foreign reserves for the Egyptian treasury. Following the persistent reduction of transits through the southern Strait, this toll revenue fell by roughly 40%. This dramatic fiscal contraction acts as a stark physical measurement of the systemic blockage. When vessel transits drop, the canal's fiscal yields contract in direct proportion, illustrating how the financial stability of the Northern Gateway is structurally bound to the physical security of the Southern Passage. While the current single strait disruption inflicts a multi-billion-dollar annual toll, energy modelers warn of a far more severe systemic shock if regional volatility expands. Supply chain analysts have simulated a dual chokepoint occlusion involving both the Bab el-Mandeb and the Strait of Hormuz. In this simultaneous disruption scenario, the scale of global economic damage escalates from an annual operational drag to an acute, compounding daily crisis. Quantitative models project that a synchronized closure of these two corridors would cost the global economy approximately $10 billion per day, triggering an immediate seizure in international supply chains. The driver of this catastrophic valuation is the irreplaceable volume of energy locked behind the Persian Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz carries about 35% of all seaborne oil trade, alongside a significant share of global liquefied natural gas. Severing this passage simultaneously with the Red Sea corridor completely isolates Middle Eastern energy resources from Western markets, eliminating any remaining logistical flexibility for global tankers. This model excludes other major maritime bottlenecks, such as the Strait of Malacca, which operates under distinct regional systems. The projection isolates what happens when the two primary Western Asiatic valves are closed at once, demonstrating that the global supply architecture possesses no built-in redundancy to survive a multi-organ failure. As of mid-2026, this structural pathology remains active and unresolved. The instability within the Bab el-Mandeb is not a temporary episode, but a permanent diagnostic feature of modern commerce. The international trading architecture operates with almost no functional slack, relying on a handful of narrow geographic gaps to sustain its entire volume. When one of these physical corridors constricts, there is no viable backup system to absorb the pressure. Instead, the blockage forces a chronic redistribution of cost across the global network, manifesting as elevated freight rates, inflated insurance premiums, and extended voyages. The map remains compromised. The global economy continues to pump its daily trade through a compromised vascular system, waiting for the next systemic shock to expose the absolute fragility of its design. The blockage in this global artery remains open, proving our economic vascular system cannot self-heal. We are no longer witnessing a temporary shock, but managing a chronic systemic disease. What happens when the next critical pathway hemorrhages? Share your thoughts below.